Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another Enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, make sure you hit that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. At least I hope so. In this video, I would like to break down the most vital perk recommendations for the Rifleman soldier class in Enlisted to make you as effective as possible on the battlefield, whether you have a preference for bolt actions, typically found in lower BRs, or fixed semi-auto or select fire rifles found in the higher BR matches. I believe Riflemen are one of the most used, if not the most used class in Enlisted, especially in low BR matches, so since you'll be using these guys more often than not, I figured I would help you guys get the most value out of them as opposed to just, making them run to the point it's cannon fodder. So let's go ahead and get into it. I've said this before, but something to keep in mind for these perk videos is that you always want to attack the perks from the standpoint of either buffing what skills make your particular soldier class more effective, and also from the standpoint of attacking the bad stats of the weapon that you have in hand, or conversely accentuating or making the good stats of a weapon that you have in hand even better overall, if that makes any sense. Since you get bolt action rifles first, I believe it would make more sense to cover these guys first as well, and I will also start with the mobility category or the green perks. The first perk I would highly implore you guys to get is going to be the movement speed while crawling or crouching, and normally I would say this reduces your recoil is the main reason, but that's more of a non-factor on bolt actions. The main reason that I want you guys to get this is because it will improve your weapon sway, and of course it will also make it easier for you to avoid bullets as you strafe back and forth and return fire to your enemies. Highly recommended, as missing with a bolt action rifle is one of the worst feelings, but if you can get your enemies to miss with their bolt action rifles, that would be one of the most relieving feelings, as you get extra time to return fire again and actually hit the target. The only other perk I highly recommend in the first section is going to be the speed of changing pose, because the faster you can get in and out of cover, the better. Since Rifleman is a frontline soldier, you don't necessarily need to improve on your jump height for any reason, and I doubt that you'll be on fire often enough to warrant spending a whole perk point on putting yourself out. When you could use it on something that's more universal and always going to come in handy, if that makes any sense. Moving into the second category of the mobility category or the green perks, you'll definitely want to be grabbing that medpack usage speed perk. Reason being, riflemen are typically supposed to be near the front or at least at medium range, thinning out the enemies as they try to move into the point, or conversely thinning out the enemies before using that quantity unique 9-man squad to actually take the objective. More often than not, you'll be taking damage, so the faster you can bandage and get back to doing your job, the better. Only other green perk you'll need in this category is the increase to your run speed. I'm sure some of you would belay that statement and make an argument for the weapon aim speed, but I would rebuttal that by saying that generally speaking, the aim speed in Enlisted is pretty darn fast on almost all the rifles, and there are only a niche few weapons where you would legitimately need that perk for faster aiming. As previously discussed, sprint speed is often too costly for what it does when you consider that you could just switch to your melee weapon to run faster if needed, and I even found this little burb on enlisted.net showing that the run speed perk actually gives you faster sprint speed too, just significantly less so. Climbing speed is not a bad perk by any means, but I do not find that to be as important on riflemen compared to general movement speed in general. If I'm saying general too many times. But anyways, moving into the first section of the vitality category or the red perks, this one has some variability, but something that will always come in handy is the stamina regeneration speed perk and the health recovery outside of combat. Both of these are generalized useful perks, but where you'll want to start making some considerations is going to be choosing between spending 1 perk point on holding your breath longer or spending 2 perk points on the reduced shell shock and concussion effects. The way I look at it, if you're using a bolt action rifle that has really bad iron sights, or if you're just not that great at aiming in general, then I could see why you would want to have the increase holding your breath, as that would make hitting your shots easier in general. And again, when it comes to bolt action rifles, missing is a sin, so you want to do that as little as possible. But in the same respect, anybody who has played this game for longer than a day will know that your screen will constantly be being shook by tanks or planes or artillery, one of the three, which is equally devastating to having good aim. So there isn't really a wrong answer here, because again, missing with a bolt action rifle is something you just don't want to do, and any perk that you can do to reduce the odds of you missing as much as possible is a good perk to choose. It's just a matter of how many perk points you have in general, and whether you struggle with aiming or if you have more struggles with being concussed and missing because of your screen being wobbly for no reason, which is again one of the more annoying things in Enlisted. How many perk points you have left to choose between the previously debated perks from tier 1 will probably depend on how many you spend for the tier 2 recommendations, but I'm highly going to recommend that you go all in on the health recovered after bandaging and the stamina increased overall in general. In regard to the stamina, it's imperative that you get to the objective as soon as possible, and the more stamina you have overall to do that, the sooner you can get where you need to be and actually be useful to your team. Considering that your squad has the most manpower available out of any other squad in the game, the more of them you can keep at maximum health, including the guy you're controlling, the better in that regard as well. As previously stated in another video, stability after receiving damage just costs too much for what it does, and 9 times out of 10 if you're hit by a bolt action rifle, which you're very liable to be in the lower BR matches, you're probably not going to be staying alive often to retaliate. So vitality is also just one of those things where it just costs too much, where you could be spending those perk points on a more well-rounded build of a soldier, if that makes any sense. Last section to cover is going to be the weapon or yellow perk category, and this one also has a little bit of variability in the first tier. Non-negotiables are going to be the decreasing of the shot deviation after quick turning. Anything that hurts your accuracy as a rifleman, you want to attack it. Speaking of attack, does your bolt action rifle have a bayonet on it? More than likely it does, so I highly encourage you to grab at least one melee attack speed perk for the times you're actually fighting on the OBJ in close range, as this can and will save your life in a pinch if your rifle is on empty. If it's one of those rare instances where you don't have a bayonet on your rifle, or maybe you just forget to use the bayonet very often, alternatively you could go for the increased throwing range of your grenades, because very often I do like to put grenade pouches on my riflemen, but I do find this one to be a little too costly, on top of having to relearn the entire throwing trajectory of your grenades for one singular soldier, unless you plan on putting it on all of them, because that one soldier will just happen to be Tom Brady, and then all of the other ones will throw normally, which can mess you up very often if you happen to forget that that one soldier has the perk and the rest of them don't. No reason to grab the weapon change speed perk unless you're one of those niche players who like to run overkill perk on your soldier instead of the equipment bag. I have nothing against it personally, I just rather have a little more utility with my riflemen as opposed to 5 extra bullets, so that's just my 2 cents on that. In tier 2 for the yellow perks, my recommendations are going to be the increase to the reloading speed. It's a great way to counter one of the biggest downfalls on bolt action rifles, which is going to be, slow reloading. My other recommendation should be rather obvious, but you definitely want to get your mitts on that greater fire rate while using bolt actions in general perk. This perk was literally tailor made for bolt action rifles, and it counters their other biggest downfall, which is going to be the fire rate. So once you grab that, you're golden. And like I said earlier in the video, recoil is a non-factor on bolt action rifles, and I suppose some of you could grab the perk that gives you a greater chance of going into a down state, but if you're investing in reload speed and the bolt action chamber speed perk like I previously recommended, I don't really think you would have many perk points left to invest in that. But if you do, more power to you, because that's just a trifecta at that point. Alright, so that takes care of low tier riflemen and their bolt action rifles, but what about when you start unlocking the semi-auto and select fire rifles later on? These bad boys behave drastically different from our bolt action counterparts, and as such require a slightly different mindset and perk setup for maximum effectiveness. We won't be changing much in our green and red perk sections, as those don't directly affect our weapon more so than they affect our soldier performance, but we do have some shifting around to do in the yellow section. If you happen to be using a semi-auto with no bayonet, I highly advise you to take off the melee speed perk, as you will soon have a better place to allocate those points. Honestly, even if you have a semi-auto with a bayonet on it, I would highly recommend taking it off, because the more important perk you will now want to pay attention to is the vertical recoil control in the second tier. Whereas before, recoil was irrelevant, now it becomes critical with the gained ability to shoot back-to-back shots without having to rechamber in between each one. Since your fire rate issue is now in the past, you will now want to focus on keeping your rifle as steady as possible as you switch from target to target. And also with that knowledge, I'm sure you will also know that we will no longer need the bolt rechamber speed perk anymore. So I highly advise you to invest instead in the reload speed perk even more, as the early semi-auto rifles still have a pretty small magazine that will have you reloading often despite being able to shoot faster. If you cannot afford the reloading speed, you can just grab the greater chance of going into a downstate perk, but non-negotiable is going to be the recoil control, as that will become immensely important the faster you shoot your weapon. But yeah, man, that pretty much takes care of how I would go about setting up my Rifleman perks. Again, there is a little bit of variability depending on what type of rifle you are using in particular between bolt actions and semi-autos, but hopefully this will help you get more use out of your Rifleman squads in general, as I'm pretty sure this is the squad that most enlisted players use the most, especially early on when they first start playing. So again, I just wanted to, drop this and see if I could help people get better in a general sense. But anyways, if you enjoyed or learned something useful, don't forget to aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. And yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Black Guy out.